Hey, this is Cave Cat again, here today with another exciting episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. However, this episode is going to be a little bit different from all the previous episodes I've done. After all, this show is called Cave Cat's Movie and TV Reviews, so that means that it's not limited to just TV shows. I can cover movies as well, whether they're live action or animated or even animated specials, such as the one we're going to be looking at today. Today, we're going to be talking about Scruffy. No, I'm not talking about the 2000 series called Scruff. I'm actually talking about the 80s animated special. Scruffy was created and produced back in 1980 by Ruby Spears Productions, which I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with. Anyway, Ruby Spears produced the special as a part of the ABC Weekend Special, which, for those of you who don't know, was an anthology series that aired on ABC starting in 1977 before ending sometime in the mid-1990s. The ABC Weekend Special was especially interesting that its episodes were adaptations of various children's literature that were published in past decades. Sometimes the episodes would range from being live action to being animated. In the case of the latter, they would get various animation studios to produce episodes for the series, one of which being Ruby Spears, as I've mentioned earlier. But anyway, now that that's been said and done, let's get on with the special itself. To start off, Scruffy was based off of a book known as Scruffy, the Tuesday Dog, which was published by a guy named Jack Stoneley, who was a reporter. The initial backstory for the special, and the book it was based off of, is that Stoneley came to the dog pound on a Tuesday in search of a story, and it was there that he saw a lost and lonely little mongrel pup in one of the cages. The instant Stoneley saw this little puppy, something inside him just clicked, so he decided to take a picture of the pup, publish his story, and the story got turned into a best-selling book. And decades after the book was published, Ruby Spears got a hold of the book and decided to produce the animated special Scruffy for the ABC Weekend Special, as I mentioned earlier. So what's the special about? It's about a dog named Duchess who was abandoned by her owners due to the fact that they're moving to an apartment. And of course, since dogs are not allowed in apartments, they have to leave her behind so that she can be taken home by a friend of theirs. However, Duchess doesn't understand why her owners have left her behind, so she breaks loose and tries to look for her owners, to no success, all while not knowing that the friend came looking for her to take her home but can't find her anywhere. At the same time, Duchess ends up giving birth to a little puppy named Scruffy, though she doesn't get her name until later on in the special, spoiler alert. Because of that, Duchess and Scruffy find themselves in all sorts of danger, ranging from the house they were staying in getting set on fire to going on the run to try and find Duchess's previous owners. Yeah, this special doesn't mess around when it comes to retelling the book that's based on, because from what I heard, the original book pulls no punches in letting the reader know about the harsh realities of what happens to stray dogs that had been abandoned by uncaring people and left to fend for themselves. I never read the book, but the special actually does a pretty good job retelling the events of the book for the most part. One thing I did discover from all the times I watched this special throughout the years is that this is actually the darkest thing to have ever been created by Ruby Spears, who was known for producing such lighthearted shows as Fang Face, Rickety Rocket, Mighty Man and Yuck, and many others. Even Hanna-Barbera, who is as equally lighthearted in nature as Ruby Spears is, didn't shy away from making dark stuff when they adapted Last of the Curlews as an episode of the ABC After School special back in the early 1970s. It's pretty ironic the way I mentioned Hanna-Barbera, especially since Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, the founders of Ruby Spears, actually used to work at Hanna-Barbera as sound editors before being promoted to story editors in the late 1960s. In fact, they're actually the ones responsible for helping to create and develop Scooby-Doo. But anyway, back to Scruffy. Like I said, this special is very dark because, like the book that it's based off of, it covers a lot of dark elements, such as the abandonment of dogs, the hardships that the stray dogs go through, and the possibilities of death. And also, speaking of death, a couple of characters in this special actually end up dying, which is very shocking for an animated special at the time, a little similar to when Adventures from the Book of Virtues would occasionally retell stories that showed characters dying, whether they're on-screen or off-screen. This is especially jarring because Duchess, the mother of the main character Scruffy, ends up getting killed off at the end of the first act of the special in kind of a similar manner as what happened in Disney's Bambi. Another thing to bring up is that a lot of people compared this special to that of Bambi at the time, though while it does take some elements from Bambi, it also takes elements from that of Lady and the Tramp as well, being that the designs of both Scruffy and Butch are very similar to those of Lady and Tramp respectively. I can't have been the only one to have noticed that similarity even from back when I was a kid. I forgot to mention this, but the only reason I became familiar with the special at a young age was because my grandma actually owned the original VHS of the special, and I would often watch it whenever my family and I would come to visit my grandma and grandpa. So because of that, it's another animated film that I grew up with throughout my childhood. But moving on, even in spite of how undeniably dark and bleak this special is, I actually enjoy it because I often find myself invested in the story and the characters, and especially with how fluid the animation is. It's Ruby Spears' trademark style of animation, but who cares about that? Each of the characters of the special have their own charm, quirks, and great personalities that add a more lighthearted feel to the special, especially Scruffy and Butch. Scruffy is meant to be the audience surrogate, because you really feel sorry for her and all of the perils that she ends up going through in her quest to find a new home, ever since her mother Duchess got killed. And when she finally does find a loving home, you can't help but feel your heart melt that she has finally found a permanent home. Butch is the rough and tumble yet kind and understanding stray who becomes Scruffy's friend and protector and eventual mate after he gets adopted alongside Scruffy. As mentioned before, he kind of reminds me of Tramp from Lady and the Tramp, not just from his character design, but from his distrust of humans. At first, though. The other stray dogs are also pretty fine characters on their own as well, such as Sam, Randy, Collie, Solo, and especially Caesar. Caesar is especially interesting since he starts off being the right-hand attack dog to Catelyn, the main antagonist of the special. Though to be fair, Catelyn and Caesar were not in the original book, and Catelyn does end up getting dropped near the beginning of the third act after he and Caesar were thwarted in their attempt to use Scruffy as a distraction in robbing stores anyway. And plus, you really feel sorry for Caesar once he gets abandoned by Catelyn following his failure to retrieve Scruffy. Regarding Caesar, Frank Welker does an awesome job voicing him, giving him that rather menacing and anger-filled performance that really makes him sound very intimidating. Which is another thing I should talk about, the voice cast. Ruby Spears got a pretty good array of voice actors and actresses to voice the characters in the special, such as Michael Bell, Hans Conried, aka Captain Hook and Jim Darling from Disney's Peter Pan, Frank Welker, as I mentioned earlier, Linda Gary, Janet Waldo, and several others. Especially Scruffy, who was voiced by Nancy McKeon, best known for starring in The Facts of Life, before later going on to have a recurring role in the Disney Channel series Sunny with a Chance years later. The actors did a great job with the voice roles that they were given, giving each of the characters a likable air about them in order to lighten the mood of the special anytime it decides to throw in a dark moment. In conclusion, for being one of Ruby Spears' darkest productions ever made, aside from when they made an animated sequence for the original Child's Play, Scruffy is still a pretty enjoyable special that really pushes the envelope with its dark nature and rather bleak storytelling. It's no question that because of that, I will give Scruffy 8 stars. In spite of its dark moments, lack of sugarcoating, and its otherwise mostly faithful retelling of Jack Stoneley's original book, I feel that Scruffy is an enjoyable animated special that passes for being an episode of the ABC Weekend Special. Give it a watch, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy it. Although, if you're a kid under, say, 10, you're going to have to be prepared for a lot of shocking moments and dark plot elements. But other than that, it's a special you'll really enjoy if you're more accustomed to dark stuff. Well, anyway, that's a wrap for this episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. I know I keep saying this, but be sure to stay tuned to my YouTube channel for the next episode, or whatever video I'll come up with next. So until next time, later!